Bruce over here at the Leather Homestead. I'm just out here cleaning up some limbs and stuff today, and so I thought I might show you what I've been doing here on my property, and maybe it'd be something you could do over there. This pasture that I'm standing in here is about 2.5 acres, and it rolls a little bit. I'm standing down in the bottom of it, and it didn't have much of an erosion problem until we started mowing it and grazing it. And then right down through the middle here, and I'll show you in a minute how it lays, but we started getting some big cuts. And when it rains hard here, everything comes off of both sides, and then my neighbor up above me up here, a bunch of water comes off of him. Anyway, it runs down through here a foot deep at least sometimes. And so we were getting some big cuts right down here in the center. And so I decided I was gonna have to do something about it. And I couldn't take the stock off of here. We had horses in here at the time. And so I started with just something across there to slow the water down. And one of these is blocks, one of them's landscape blocks, and then one up here is just big logs. You got to kind of start with something that won't initially wash away in the first few rains that you get until you get it built up to where it pretty well slows the water down. The water can run through it a little bit. It's not really a dam, and I don't know, probably somebody's got a technical word for it. I just call it a catchment. But the principle comes from something that I learned back in East Texas when I was trapping for a fella on his property back there. And he had lots of beaver, and those beaver were making dams all across this creek, all the way down through his property, probably about a mile's worth of creek that ran down through his bottom. Well, they were cutting the trees down, which he didn't want, but in the course of a couple of years, we found out that those beaver putting those dams across there was slowing that creek down, because when it rains hard there too, and a lot of water goes right down in this one creek, and it gets out of the banks, and it's pretty rough. It really rolls. So he hadn't been down in there in 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 years. He was a kind of a high dollar guy, and he didn't get out in the woods much. So I was trapping for him and trying to get some of those beaver out, because he didn't want them cutting the trees down. And he decided to go down in there, and he remembered it from years before, and he told me that what we finally come up with was that those beaver were damming that creek up in several places, slowing that water down enough that water would get slow enough and the silt in that water would have time to settle out. He was actually gaining usable ground all the way down through that bottom. And like I said, it was a long bottom, and it was also pretty flat. So when the water get out of the banks, it went a long way, but when it was still rolling pretty fast. So the beaver dams were slowing that rain down enough in order for that silt, and he was actually gaining usable ground for pasture. He had more pasture, he said, than he had in years past. So the concept was, I thought, well, maybe that'll work here. So I'm going to show you here in a second. Anyway, that's where I got the idea for this. It's somebody's probably done it lots of different places, but I'll get off this camera and I'll turn it around and I'll show you kind of where it started, what the problem was, and kind of how it's gotten a whole lot better. All right, get right back to you. All right, right down there is where the water goes out of my property. It goes down another 200 or 300 yards and hits a small drainage there, and then eventually ends up in the creek. But this is where we had a cut here, all the way from that fence line all the way up to here, and it was about 2 feet deep. when I finally decided I had to do something with it. I couldn't hardly get across it with my bush hog. And there's still just a little bit of a low spot here, but what we've been doing is dragging our leaves from all of these trees back up in here, and all the leaves in the front, we just blow them down along that fence line. Then I'll rake them down here with my box blade, and then I just bring them in here and store them. And they would fill in this area right in here. And then a lot of times they'd wash away because we'd get a rain just right and they hadn't settled. So what I started doing is right here, down inside this big pile of brush is some block, some brick, right up here towards the front. And now when that water hits, and I just been taking limbs and sticks and stuff we picked up from here, there, and everywhere, and now we're putting it in here, and it's working pretty good. This is slowing it down in this area. This is the lowest one, and then when the water leaves here, it goes down in and across that fence line there. But it comes off of this hillside here, all back up in there. And then I've got another place that I've blocked off right here. And I'm adding right now, big walnut limb came down, so I'm adding all this walnut material. I got a load right here, and this dog's helping me quite a bit. You can see that. And so we got the same situation here. The cut coming out of this one down through there was not quite as bad as the other one down below, but it was still pretty significant. And you can see it's filled in and grassed in pretty well right now. So this was the second one from the bottom. And like I say, I had block and brick, and I think I've got a couple in this one. I believe I've got a couple of pretty good sized logs in there, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 foot around. It's just something to slow the water down. And I didn't want it to be, and well, some people might think, well, that's kind of unsightly. And I guess it might be. It's just a natural looking deal to me. It's better than a block wall. And there's a lot of stuff I think that lives off in there, you know, small stuff. And then that water comes up into here, and I've got another smaller one right here. This one, we walked past here going up there to that barn, and it's filled this in pretty well. I got one big log in there. That's slowing that down. I won't add too much more probably this one because we walked by here not too long ago. Had a great big turtle trying to nest up right there. And this is where we walk right here. So that was a little unnerving from my wife. But she likes turtles, so when she got over wondering what it was, got about halfway buried up. And then that water comes down through here, and you can see up above there, I've got another pretty good size catchment right there. And just on the other side of that is my road that takes me from the front to the back. And then it goes up that hill and then up to the barn up there. So anyway, this gives me couple of different deals. It gives me a place to put all the brush that comes from all these trees that we've got around here, which we used to just take them to the back and put them in a big hole back there that my wife calls it sinkhole. There's a gigantic maple tree growing right in the center of it. It's probably 30, 40 feet around, but we've been filling that up, and it's about full. So this is a good use for the material that we have. It's natural. Rabbits and stuff can get off in there and hide when they're crossing this open space. So it's kind of a win-win. And I don't mind the looks of it. It's natural to me. So, and we've got a pretty good supply of material. So I don't imagine we'll And this just kind of breaks down over time. And if I get some kind of big equipment in there, a lot of times I'll run over the top of it, mash it down a little bit and kind of make it settle. But it comes off of that, from that barn all down through here, and there was a ton of water. Anyway, that's what we're doing to slow the water down, kind of keep it. And when we do slow it down, it gets into the soil here a little bit better. And I've thought about putting some swells on these slopes, but I don't know that we're gonna probably ever do that. It would probably be a good thing, but then we got to maintain them and plant them, and we've got plenty to do around here. So anyway, that's kind of what we're doing today. Cleaning up around, getting some limbs and stuff trimmed, and I just wanted to show you this, how I'm dealing with getting this water slowed down through this cut. And maybe you got a place somewhere on your land you can do the same thing, make a little bit of a use of some of that material you have that burning up or throwing in a hole. So thanks for watching. If you could like, subscribe, and all that, that'd be great. That'd help me out. And don't forget, if you're going to have something, you're going to have to do something. Take care.